What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out a brand new Negation Link monster that just got revealed. This card is going to be released in Rising Rampage, although we did technically know about this card before today. It was posted on the OCG Twitter page, or at least its artwork was for a mat in the OCG. We didn't know what the monster actually did or what its name was or anything like that at that time, but we now know what the monster is, what mechanic it is, and we know exactly how we're going to get it. Link monster, and it's in Rising Rampage. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the Summon Divine Bow Apollarissa, which it's a weird name, but you know, I digress. Anyways, it's a Link 4 monster. It's also a Wind Fairy type. It has question mark attack, and the link points are identical to Saryuja Scourge Reds. It points up towards your opponent, and then it points all the rest of the link points are bottom, down towards you, the bottom right, the bottom left, and then the straight bottom. Now, the summoning conditions, the materials are fairly simple. They're just two monsters with different names except tokens, which, I mean, to me, that just kind of screams like nightmare monsters, right? Because basically, like, half of the TCG can summon nightmare monsters, and essentially you summon this the same way you're going to summon nightmare monsters, so it seems like it's going to be easy enough to get on the board. I think just off the makeup of that, it really seems like Konami wants people to play this card. I mean, nightmare summoning conditions, Saryuja link points, like, those are cards that see tons of play in the OCG and the TCG. Anyways, we got three effects on this little lady. The first effect is you can only control one copy of the Summon Divine Bow Apollarissa. The second effect is the original attack of this card becomes the number of monsters used as link material for this card times 800. So basically, if you use 4 different monsters, this card will come out at 3,200 attack, which, I mean, that's pretty legitimate for a Link 4 monster. But the third effect is really what kind of like sells this card, and it's what is probably going to be the effect that is most used on this card. It's going to be the most relevant effect in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! If your opponent activates a monster effect, you can activate this effect. This card loses exactly 800 attack, and if you do, negate that activation. Okay, so effect number 3 is clearly the most relevant effect on this card, and it is absolutely superb, especially considering it is not a hard once per turn. In fact, it's not even like a once per chain effect, as a lot of these negation type effects that can activate more than once per turn usually are. I'm looking at something like Light and Darkness Dragon. Honestly, if you're in the position, I think that you should use all your negation effects as quickly as possible. Go ahead and negate 4 of your opponent's monster effects, because you're looking to get that return on investment before this card ends up dying. If your opponent throws 4, you know, monster effects at you and you negate all of them, chances are, even if they kill your Divine Bow, like, you're probably just gonna win the duel because they've used so much card advantage. Now, with that said, some people are saying that this card is like broken, and I don't think it's quite that level. It's an amazing card, don't get me wrong. It reminds me a whole lot of Light and Darkness Dragon. The monster, as it uses its negations, gets progressively weaker until it can't negate anymore. However, this card is not broken in my opinion, and that's because, number 1, it cannot negate spells and traps. Now, if it can negate spells and traps, then I'd be like, this card might be broken, but it does only negate monster effects, which is important. But in certain matchups, for instance, like against Sky Striker, you know, there are decks that don't really care that much about it. The second thing is, and this one isn't quite as big, it doesn't actually destroy the monster it negates. It just actually negates the activation. And why is that important, right? That's important because let's just say you're playing against something like Salamangreat. Your opponent goes normal summon Gazelle, normal summon Foxy, normal summon Lady the Bug, activate the effect. It means that you're not going to be able to destroy those monsters. Sure, you negate them, but your opponent still gets to go into Banelix and can still like potentially combo out. They still get to keep their monster, and not being able to destroy the monster, it can hurt in a lot of situations. Now, if your opponent activates like a hand trap, or if your opponent activates an effect that activates in the graveyard, then basically it's not going to matter, because you can't destroy cards that are activating in like the graveyard. If it's a hand trap, it's not really going to matter in that sense. So in a lot of situations, it really won't be that relevant, but there are some situations where your opponent might just normal something, or they might like set a Guru, flip it face up, you negate it, but you wanted to kill the Guru. You're not actually getting to kill that. Overall, I think that this card will see play, because any card that gives you 4 negations potentially in a turn, I just think is going to see play, especially when it's so so generic that, you know, any deck that can summon a Nightmare can basically summon this card. And really, if you think about it, if Konami does happen to hit like Saryuja Skull Dread, this is going to become one of the best Link monsters to summon when you're going first. Like, think about going first and think about having 4 negations. We see a lot of decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Summon multiple Saryujas turn 1. This could easily replace one of those Saryujas in a combo, especially if you're like ending on it. Anyways, whatever you guys think of the Summon Divine Bow Apolarissa, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.